But what I never saw another book do, and what I very intentionally reverse engineered for myself, was being able to discover what is it about human nature or about the world or about whatever it might be, where people will actually start to get results and still quit. And if I could identify that, if I could address that, if I could articulate that, and I could also articulate how I solved it for myself in a universal way, in a user-friendly way that anyone else can replicate it, that's the new thing I'm bringing to the table that no other book did. That's where I get to kind of say, yeah, it really is the last law of attraction book you'll ever need to read.
Hey legends, Damien here, the creator and founder of Apex Unleashed. Really looking forward to you today, to seeing today's episode, and hopefully for you, it's the gateway for you finding out a little bit about yourself and how you can help you move forward with your goals, hopes and dreams.
Everybody, it's Damien Piotr here from Apex Unleashed. I have a very special guest with me, Andrew Kapp. How are you?
I'm doing great. So excited to be here and where we might take this conversation. So thanks so much for having me.
You've got a book and it's in the background there, is that the last law of attraction book you'll ever need to read. And I came across you looking for something else. And then I listened to some of the things that you were doing, and we talk about manifestation and everything else. And it's just like, it's no surprise that, I've come across you and you've been kind enough to share some time with me, because I always have a theme for my podcast and quotes. And this is the personal quote that's personal to me, is that the universe leaves clues. And you talk a lot about that too, like success is inevitable. What was it like for you the first time you came across the law of attraction? Was there anything you felt about it that you just went, hey, there's something about this that I need to investigate?
The interesting thing, and I think actually this will hopefully serve people more, is when I discovered the law of attraction, it was one modality of many that I was just looking into in my own personal journey and my own personal attempt to find the secret to happiness and success and fulfillment and whatever it might be. And it being, one modality of many, to be honest, it was actually pretty inconsistent for me. And I would actually find out a couple of years later, it wasn't the law of attraction that was inconsistent. It was me who was inconsistent. And, to drag this answer out just a little bit and give people a little more insight in what I mean, I actually hit a wall 4 years after learning about the law of attraction. And, in those 4 years, I'm experimenting with it and things are kind of happening and kind of not happening. But I hit this horrible wall where, I felt, to be dramatic about it, I felt like I lost 90% of my life in 1 week, where I basically lost my business. And 3 days later, my girlfriend of 3 years breaks up over text. And I had to kind of look in the mirror and say, like, what's going on here? What's going on with my life? And looking back and trying to reverse engineer, like, what went right and what went wrong. And I had this weird simultaneous epiphany and moment of indignation where I'm like, well, looking back on these past couple of years when I was trying to make life work for me, that law of attraction thing kind of seemed to work whenever I did it and didn't stop doing it. And so basically I said, you know what, that does it. I don't care what happens. I don't care when it happens, why it happens, how it happens. I don't care about any of that. I'm going to go all in with this thing. And when I say all in, I don't mean all day, every day, because human nature, I knew that even that wasn't sustainable. But I was angry and indignant and motivated enough that I can devote 5 or 10 minutes a day to simple gratitude methods, visualization exercises, scripting, and just to see what would happen. And it was almost like a movie where once I made that decision and once I leaned in and did it without caring about the how or the when or the result, things really shifted. I felt better 2 weeks later, better than anyone with a broken heart at any business feeling. 3 months later, I'm in a brand new, way healthier relationship with someone who's a lot better for me. 4 months later, I'm making more money than at any point in my life before then. And 6 months later, like, everything was different. I'm waking up happy and fulfilled. I'm in the best shape of my life. And I basically learned the hard way that whatever this thing is, and we'll call it the law of attraction, it works when you work it. So in terms of a first experience, it was kind of inconsistent. In terms of a first significant experience where I actually had insight and I'm like, okay, there's something to this. It was almost, it was like magic. There's no better way of describing it, because even though I was doing things also simultaneously seemed to happen for me. And that's the really cool thing about this.
And I've learned too, personal experience, is that you make the law of attraction work for you. And I know that's something you're super familiar with, because when you went to write the book, your avatar and your mindset, because I'm, sales background, sales focused, like anything, is that you got to bring something new to the table to the client. And you knew that. You were so aware. So, okay, so there's 1,000 books that say similar things. What am I bringing to the table that's a little different? So reverse engineering where you're at when you started writing the book to then to now. What is it you think now that you brought to the table that was different that you didn't even realize at the time that you were learning about yourself individually, you, Andrew?
So it isn't even the thing where I look back and like, now I know what I brought to the table. I actually had a lot of intentionality, and I knew what I was bringing to the table from the onset. And I mean, you think about it, a very bold title like The Last Law of Attraction book you'll ever need to read, I better bring something new to the table. And the thing that I brought to the table, and I think you said the word avatar, in terms of understanding your customer or your client, or really understanding whoever you were serving, I was able to look at my own experiences of reading all these law of attraction books and starting to use it and starting to get results, and then still quitting and wondering why life wasn't working for me. So my viewpoint, knowing that there were like 1,000 law of attraction books out there, was that any law of attraction book worth its salt, it's going to explain the law of attraction ideally in a user-friendly, understandable way. But it's also going to provide user-friendly methods that you can use, visualization, gratitude, whatever it might be, in order to attract and manifest the things that you want. But what I never saw another book do, and what I very intentionally reversed engineered for myself, was being able to discover what is it about human nature or about the world or about whatever it might be, where people will actually start to get results and still quit. And if I could identify that, if I could address that, if I could articulate that, and I could also articulate how I solved it for myself in a universal way, in a user-friendly way that anyone else can replicate it, that's the new thing I'm bringing to the table that no other book did. That's where I get to kind of say, yeah, it really is the last law of attraction book you'll ever need to read. Sure, you can read more after that, but you'll never need to, because I'm finally, ideally, hopefully, filling in that missing gap that everyone seems to struggle with when they learn this and they try it, and then they think it's some kind of scam or some kind of fad because they don't get what they're expecting or what they're wanting.
I've gone through that transformation too with The Gap and the Gain. It's an amazing book. And it talks about your ideals and measuring where you've come from as opposed to where you are. Because when we measure our ideals, it's about where we want to be, not where we are in that moment. So when you talk about consistency and, the great example is always there. I've always been forever into health and fitness, but have I always been consistent? No, but when it's going well and you're getting results, you get to a point where you're like, cool, that's probably about the heaviest thing I'm going to lift. I'll go do something else now. And that's the challenge, right? In a business sense and talking to people, it's just like some deals are easier than others, but in business, working for yourself, which everyone wants to have the freedom to work for themselves, but they don't have the responsibility of knowing that if they don't get a deal tomorrow, they're not going to get paid, because they want something to be easier for them, because the ideal of social media and seeing something on Instagram and be like, oh, that looks easier, so I want to find the easy way. For me, I think it's probably the message is that if you can nail consistency, that 2% in life that become really successful, all talk about that and they're super consistent. You sort of agree to that sort of philosophy as well. There's very few people that can maintain it.
Yeah, and the key to consistency, there's it's almost like a cliche, like do what you love. And I think that's sometimes people misunderstand that, because most people love to just sit around and relax and, sip Mai Tais on the beach, right? They don't love the work, or they don't love the heavy lifting of stuff, even talking about a gym. But I think there's an aspect of finding a way of loving what you do, because it's only through that love and through that satisfaction, that continually reinforce satisfaction, that you're going to have the patience in order to grit your teeth through the stuff that you don't enjoy so much. I'm not saying this is the only key to consistency. I think there's always more than one way. But in my own personal life experience and understanding my own psychology, the best path to consistency was finding a way where I am motivated, or I am validated, or I'm basically getting something out of the work that I am doing. I'm not sure how many of your listeners are aware of Dan Kennedy as a name, as a legendary marketer. But one thing I learned from him that I put the lesson in my new book, 3 Words I Used to Sell 100,000 Books, was I learned that even after he made it as a huge multimillionaire, even after he had reached that point, he basically had committed to doing at least one thing every single day in service to his business and his work, whether that's answering a fax back when faxes were a thing, or answering a phone call, or answering an email, or organizing a massive in-person event. Whatever it might be, he basically had enough of a love for it where it was worth it to him to do something every single day. And that's actually what I do. Whether I'm on an interview like this, yes, or I'm answering an email, or I'm writing a new book that points to the old book or anything like that, that part of it is like there's a certain love and a certain appreciation and certain enjoyment I get out of very specific aspects that will always carry me through and help me maintain that consistency.
100%. And that leads to one of the questions I really wanted to ask you, is that the universe only responds to your vibrations. Someone who is not familiar with, I think people like to measure, right? So when you say the universe only responds to your vibrations, how would you explain that to someone who isn't open to the concept? Because at some point you're new to it. And I think this is a question a lot of people sort of kind of ask it. Vibrations mean different things to different people. So what is it for you?
Well, there are two ways of answering that question, because one way is technically more accurate and another way is ideally more helpful. So to give you both, I mean, the more accurate way is just to basically say, law of attraction is based on the premise that everything is energy, meaning you, me, the equipment we're speaking on, the clothes we're wearing. Everything's energy, and all energy vibrates at or moves on a certain vibration, and like energies or like vibrations attract like energies and vibrations. Meaning, with that understanding, if you want to get rich, you can technically do so, since thoughts are also energy and also vibration, yes, by thinking about the thing that you want, not the lack of it without realizing it, but the actual thing, and attracting it. But again, most people are like, well, that's hokey pokey, fooey hooey stuff that's airy fairy, doesn't really connect with me. So the way I describe it, that's hopefully more helpful. You were talking about working out before. Think of it as, when you're lifting weights to get muscles, which I'm saying this in a very oversimplified way, ridiculously oversimplified, right? But all right, lifting weights to get muscles. Let me give you one of two explanations as to how this actually happens. Explanation number one is you lift weights and you go to sleep at night, and while you're sleeping, the muscle fairy comes and waves her magic wand, and poof, you wake up with more muscles the next day. Fairly ridiculous. Okay. Explanation number two. When you're working out, you're actually putting so much stress on your body that your muscles are actually tearing in little areas. And what your body does is it heals itself and responds by filling in those gaps that were created by the tears with more muscle fiber, hence more muscles. Now, even that is a butchered scientific explanation, but I guarantee you most people say, well, Andrew, if I've got to pick between one of those, it's the latter. It's tearing the muscles and this and that. To which I would say, unless you are a physical therapist or a personal trainer or someone in any kind of field like that, it actually doesn't matter. What does matter is you lift weights, you get muscles. You put in X, you get Y. And by that same token, whether you believe it or not, when you have gratitude or you find ways of thinking about the things that you want, as long as you're not then contradicting those thoughts, by hook or by crook, things will happen for you. And if you don't believe me, anyone listening, I would say take 5 minutes out per day and think of something that you're grateful for without any requirement or attachment to what's supposed to happen there. And then watch what happens, because in 15 or 30 or 45 days or whatever, certain things might start to happen that just seem unbelievable. And when they do, please, I beg you, don't give me credit. Don't give my book credit. Don't give the law of attraction credit. Don't give the universe credit. Don't give the concept of vibration credit. But at the very least, recognize that you chose intentionally to feel gratitude, and then all these things continue to happen, and say, you know what, maybe I will continue with this experiment and continue with the gratitude to see if these things keep happening. Just the way if I were lifting weights and I saw my body improve, I might continue lifting weights because I had the evidence in front of me.
Yeah, absolutely. And it makes so much sense is that we talk about different things, like when you walk into a room or you meet someone. Some people you just connect with because you're on that wavelength. Some people you don't. For you and I, it's just like you can have this deep, impactful conversation, but you're not in each other's space. But if you were in the room, it would probably feel different for both of you. And that's probably how I would explain to people is that, having been around tens of thousands of people in, dealing with their most personal and private asset in real estate and their property, is that it's their space, it's their personal stuff. They're talking about their personal things and they don't know you very well, right? So you have to be able to read the atmosphere and understand what's happening. And when you're around that enough, you talk about vibrations, people feel your vibration, because anyone can do my job. They have to feel that from you, that person's going to do it to their best ability for you, not just to get a check. And that's the difference, right? Is that people feel that. They can't explain it, but they feel it. And then conversely, people go, yeah, I didn't feel that with you, so I did something with someone else. That is the best feedback a person can ever get, because you have to understand we're not for everybody, and that you have to accept is that when the universe leaves you clues, good or bad or indifferent, you have to look at it on face value and look at what are the actions I can do now that help me move forward in life. And I suppose what I've learned, and I wish I learned it earlier, and I reckon there's a lot of people that have said this about themselves as well, is that, you know, patience is so critical, not just to the law of attraction, but life. How important is patience to you?
Patience is essential, but it also, I mean, when you say the word patience, do you mean for yourself or for other people? Because it's valuable in different ways, in both ways. Because like being patient with yourself, because I think anybody and everybody who cares about their own life, there's always going to be regrets. There's always going to be a situation where I wish I knew that before X, Y, Z. I mean, it's just part of the growing process. But by that same token, also, you know, especially like if you're in sales or anything, any facet of life, you know, you need to be patient with other people as well, because, you know, again, real estate, and, you know, I'm not specific area, but you could be showing someone a house or a home and you know it's perfect for them because you've seen it a million times, but they've got an internal block and there's nothing you can say for them to get it. You know, it's almost like being patient with them. It's like, all right, well, I'll show you another house. Like, even though this is the one, there's something going on here, I'm still going to do what I can in service to you and be patient. And even that care, people don't realize, gives them the energetic and psychological space to make a better decision, whether it's in one place that you're showing them or in another. And by the way, I kind of snuck in a little hack there. Like when you want to do better in life, if you genuinely care about serving other people, just helping, just being there for them. Let's exclude law of attraction and vibration from the explanation, just in case people can't get on board with it. Let's just say psychology. You know, you can feel, because you perceive things psychologically. We pick up eye contact, body language, vocal inflection. We pick up all these modes of communication on a subconscious level that our brain and our subconscious mind processes and tells us. That's where our gut feeling is coming from in many ways, that we just don't consciously pick up. But that doesn't mean that we can't really detect it and win based off of that understanding. Like, oh, I feel this person, they're impatient or they're stressed or they're at ease. Let me respond in kind and make sure I'm serving them better with my understanding what's going on with them right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, it leads into a really important part that is so important to people, is that when people do have blockages, I know for me personally, because I know myself really well, is that a lot of the time it's my ego that's talking. And the ego's a really beautiful thing, is that people say sometimes it's the thing that gets in your way, but also it's the thing that helps you achieve. And finding the balance there is that, you know, we talked about it at the start about you need to have a plan so the ego won't talk you out of it. You know, you talk about this really well and really congruently, is that, you know, I always find is that when it comes back to decisions, is that, are you making this decision with your ego, or are you making this decision based on all the information you have? Because I will never make a decision now without asking myself that question. Is this an ego answer? Is this about my ego, or is this about something different? How do you differentiate yourself, whether you're making decisions using your ego, or is this a better decision? Because people talk about it being emotional and don't make decisions when you're tired or, you know, emotional and things like happen. For me, it's ego. When your ego's in the front of your mind, that's generally what I've found, that, you know, things probably don't go as smoothly, or there's some rocky roads that get in the way.
Yeah. And, you know, it's interesting because, like, even ego as a term and as a concept, people have different interpretations of what that is. And in my book, I define the ego as that part of your mind that it's kind of like it fits in between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. And the only interest that it really has is your survival, which is basically good news or bad news, depending on where you are in your life. Because by that understanding, that means whatever money problems you have right now, whatever relationship, even whatever health problems you have, your ego is looking around, it's like, well, my person's alive right now. So the last thing I want to do is risk the status quo. So when they are trying to make a change in their life, I might need to play on their fears and insecurities and doubts in order to keep them where they are, because I'm worried about what may happen if things change. Because someone out there might be listening, they might want to be rich and famous, but for all their ego knows is when they're famous, they're going to get a bunch of stalkers. And when they're rich, they're going to have distant family coming out of the woodwork to sue them for their home. So it's like there's always like a downside to it. And your ego's like, well, I can't ensure survival in that case, but the way the person is now, I can do it. So it doesn't really care about your satisfaction or your fulfillment or your comfort. And the key to that is just realizing it. When you have that level of self-awareness, then you can have a lot more patience with yourself. And that's also why I get back to suggesting people go through, gratitude exercises, because when you're doing that, you are bypassing the ego and feeding positive imagery and positive programming to your subconscious mind, which will overpower your ego and get you where you want to be anyway.
And that is the action step for positive self-talk, is that, if you can have it, whether it's the morning or the afternoon, about what was the positive outcome of today, what did I want to get out of tomorrow, and what are the things I'm grateful for, is that you just got to keep telling your mind what the good things are that have happened, because, we've all come a very long way. There was a time where those 2 books weren't behind you and you weren't, being able to not just grow your channels and your platforms and the people that have been touched by your work, but there was a time where this was just an idea. Without the action, none of it would have happened. So interesting is that I was cooking a steak and you talked about, feed the ego a steak flavored salad, is that it's a perfect analogy to get through to someone like myself. It's just like, oh man, I don't want to eat salads, but I know they're good for me. But what if you told yourself that salad was, in essence, had that same flavoring? Would you still eat it? Would it be different to you? It's like, the reason why that's a yes is because my mindset towards it is different. And that's the challenge. And it never ends. And people, I know, I was going to say, I know people get caught up with, oh man, when's it going to end? It's like, that's the point, guys. That is the point, is that you shouldn't want it to. You should always want to be like, one more person to talk to, one more person that I can help, one more thing that I can do, because I'm the best version of myself. It supports my children, my family, my partner, all the things that are important to me. Is that leading in action is something that's so vital. And, we talk about the manosphere and men today and how they feel like they're not doing those things and putting their dent in the universe, as they would say. How proud are you that you're putting your dent in the universe and moving forward, you're so confident it's going to continue? How proud does that make you?
I mean, it's very gratifying. And I will say this, it's like, for anyone that is struggling and they want to make their dent in the universe, it's a weird thing, because you could make a tremendous dent in the next 6 months, but there's so much more to even go further from there. And as a perfect example, this book, The Last Law of Attraction book you'll ever need to read, I've sold over 100,000 copies of it, which is like, it's mind-blowing. It's amazing, right? Okay, huge accomplishment, right? Even though it's not 1 million. So relative to 1 million, it's not huge, but relative to someone who's never sold a book in their life, it is astronomical. Now, how many YouTube subscribers do I have? I have fewer than 4,000. So here we have 2, obvious categories of life where I am so much further ahead in one and not so much another. And I'm not impatient about that. I'll have the subscribers when it's time. I'll get to 1 million copies when it's time. And because I carry that attitude, it makes it way easier for me to do what I do on a day-to-day basis and have patience with myself and have patience with the process and have ease with myself and the process, which enables me to do more videos, which enabled me to write a whole different book, which, by the way, the new book is a completely different topic, but it talks about the old book. So it's going to bring more people to the old book while bolstering its own success. Like, it's all these different moving parts and all these different things. So, I mean, I would say for people, being patient with yourself, patience is basically a daily commitment for the rest of your life, even after you've quote unquote achieved something. If I hit 1 million copies sold, well, then I'm like, well, what about 5 million? What about 10 million? What about 30 million? Like, there's always a next goal. It never stops. It never stops. And the key is to be motivated and grateful for what's on the way while being validated and grateful for what you've already got. And for all people that are thinking like, well, I haven't, there's no, I don't have a book yet or a YouTube channel yet. Okay, well, do you have your health? Do you have friends? Do you have family? Do you have a roof over your head? Do you have food on the table? These are big. Do you have use of your limbs? These are huge things that people, it's almost like they're supposed to take it for granted because it's an everyday part of life. But by that same token, it's like so many people are blessed, whether you believe in religion or not. I mean, blessed in even like a non-religious way.
Sure.
Blessed beyond belief. Even if you hate your job right now, you don't have back pain. Like some people, they're living with debilitating back pain. Maybe they're making 10 times as much money as you, but they can't get out of bed in the morning. Or maybe they have a coffee addiction you don't, or maybe you do and they don't. Like there's always something to be grateful for about your life, and you're always a lot further than you want to acknowledge. But here's the universal ninja trick. When you acknowledge it, it opens up the floodgates for you to actually then start to achieve more and enjoy more. And that's where things really take off for yourself.
Yeah, and I know this personally is that, we're one of 4 trillion, 1 in 4 trillion if you do the math about just being here. And then, creating life and relationships and families, and you're just like, wow, that's pretty special that they're 1 in 4 trillion as well. And it does make you feel very fortunate that there's a lot of people who, whether it's right or wrong, just see things for what they are, and they're happy to sit in that because they're scared, right? That scarcity word comes into it. And then you use it. So for me, it's how I interpret it, like everything, is that you've got that KO and competitor method. And for me, it's about like, you're knocking out that scarcity mentality of what I can't do. Tell me what you can do. I know it sort of came up in a different way, but that's how I interpret it. For someone like me who's listened to that and taken it on board like that, it doesn't surprise you that people look at things very differently. I take it that's no surprise to you.
Because I used to look at things so much differently. I had to grind my way into this perspective and basically have life slap me in the face so many times because I was doing until I finally figured out to take my medicine. I think, everyone is going to think in their own way. And what I basically do my best, and we'll see how well I do with it, is just to try to open up enough of a crack of a door for people to walk in. Because in the end, people, they're always going to have to make it the decision for themselves.
Yes.
The one thing that I hope that I do well as an author is I have an understanding that the more personal a problem is, the more universal it actually is. And
so true.
Everyone basically has the same problem. They might be experiencing it in a very specific individual way, but everyone has the same problem. What they want: money, they want love, they want ease, they want whatever it might be. And what I've done very well is I've articulated it for myself. I'm like, okay, as long as I can continue to articulate it for myself in a way that I address it so people understand that I know what they mean, and I address it that I give them a way out, that enables me to keep leaving that solution for people. But also I try to make it user-friendly, because we were talking about working out before and the importance of the consistency. One thing about working out, which is why I haven't written a fitness book yet, disadvantage of working out is that when you start working out, it's painful. Like there's no way around it. It's going to be painful. This law of attraction stuff that I teach and doing 5 minutes of gratitude a day, I have the luxury of this because there's no pain involved. And even if you don't believe in law of attraction, by the way, even if you don't get a result that you're supposed to get, the 5 minutes of gratitude in and of itself is a win, because that's 5 minutes of the day where you're feeling good physiologically and emotionally, rather than worrying about your money or your job or your girlfriend or your boyfriend or whatever it might be. So just the 5 minutes of gratitude is a win in and of itself, but it also, I know, spoiler alert, it leads to amazing things.
It's a wonderful way to look at life, to understand is that whatever your problem is, there is some information out there that can help. You just have to give yourself the opportunity to see it, to find it, and to be bold enough to go and ask for help. I talk about mental health a lot. I know mental health, and going into the background, you've spent a lot of years working on that too. For you, what's one practice outside of gratitude, meditation that you do for your mental health that works for you? Because everyone does things differently.
I mean, an easy thing is just taking a walk. Just daily walks will go far. That's an obvious thing. A not so obvious thing, a more counterintuitive thing, would actually just to be in service to others. Like when you do, as long as don't do something where you're resentful or it's like you're bitter about the situation. But if you could find a way to be in service to someone else in some way, shape, or form, and you see that you're helping them, like human beings are social in that way where you'll light yourself up. Just a simple thing of helping someone cross the street. Just a simple thing of if someone's walking by and they've got a dog, like, hey, cute dog, or nice shoes, or just complimenting something. Like there's just something about, serving someone or making someone feel better that in and of itself will really contribute. And you'll, again, vibrationally feel the vibe from them that you've lifted their spirits and given them a good day. And even like in the manosphere, like, I mean, we're in a very weird time where, in talking to strangers and whether they're offended or not or bothered. I mean, there's not, no matter where we are in the world, there are non-threatening ways of complimenting someone and validating them and just making them feel better that I personally, I'm not going to speak for anyone else. I always try to be there. And that has nothing to do with dating, just in terms of strangers. If someone has a cool t-shirt on, I'm going to tell them they have a cool t-shirt.
It's been a great time and experience to talk to you today. Where can people find you to go through? You've got a course, you've got a couple of books, and I'm sure there's other things that your community will get along the way that'll be great benefit to them. Where is the best place to find you?
So the course is something where if they like my Law of Attraction book, that's a good follow-up to keep going with, still learn about the book. So the best place they can go is they can go to awesomemarvelous.com. I must apologize to people outside the United States. There'll be links to my books on Amazon on the US site, but by the same token, you'll see the covers, so you could very easily search on your local Amazon for the last Law of Attraction book you'll ever need to read, or 3 words I use to sell 100,000 books. But it's also got the link to my YouTube channel. So whether you're spending a few bucks and on a book, or you just don't want to pull your wallet out and you want some free content, going to awesomemarvelous.com currently gives you 3 very easy links to learn more and hopefully benefit. And again, Dana, thanks for having me, for letting me share this. And thanks to everyone for listening. And I hope whether they pay money or they get the free content, it really is my goal that my content just serves them in some way, shape, or form and helps them leverage, the information to better their lives in some way.
Yeah, and this is how we learn, by talking, communicating, creating that community, because we're all growing together as people, because it is in service of others. Just quickly, is there a book you're currently reading that is inspiring you, or one that you've recently read that you're like, hey, people need to know about this one?
Well, if you're in business, Alex Hormozy has a book called $100 Million Offers, which I read it fairly recently. Really awesome book. I'm reading mostly my own books because I'm proofing the new one right now. Like I'm always going through and making sure there's no typos. An old classic though is What to Say When You Talk to Yourself by Shad Helmstetter. That's always a classic. So anyone's self-improvement, that's a good book. And business, Alex Hormozy's I think is really good.
Awesome. Well, I'll be seeing you on YouTube in the comments, and when we do lives and everything else, I'll be following your stuff very closely. So thank you, Andrew, very much for coming today, and we appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. The pleasure was all mine.
Thank you so much for coming to today's episode. I always talk to people about my little journal, and this is the one I've got. It's not my first one, but it really is about your thoughts and actions become really important when you write them down. So don't forget to do those daily habits. They make all the difference. Please like and subscribe to all our channels. We are here to create and share content with you that helps you move forward in your journey as well, and we'd love to hear about your success stories.